to our very first edition of SADE and
SADE.
On education.
On education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want to talk about education. We're two people named SADE, but passionate about education. And we'll be looking at, what would we be
education in all its ramifications across the whole ecosystem, private schools, public schools, and all the topical issues in education today.
Okay. Now, the first thing we always try and do is to bring you some news. What's happening in the space?
Yeah.
What are the things that, you know, since our last episode or since we were here last talking to you, what has happened? Just keep our finger on the pulse of education, both here and internationally.
So we'll start off with the WAEC results.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting
yes,
results that came out. You can imagine across the country, over 1.6 million children sat for this exam. And of this number, like 84% or 1.3 million passed with 5 credits. But that's not enough, you know. That's
I was just going to say that it's too good to be true. This thing must be a bit more nuanced. What else happened?
Yeah. Well, when you stress,
if you look behind that figure,
yes.
Does that include maths and English?
No, it doesn't.
Well, so what are you talking about then? If it doesn't include maths and English?
So when we now include maths and English, it actually goes down to like 79%, which is still a very good result.
It's not bad. That's not bad.
It's a good result. Thinking about results over the past like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So that's good. And interestingly, more girls passing than boys.
Yeah, but this is something that we're seeing a lot more, even in schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over the years, girls seem to be. What's that about?
Well, there are so many theories. I have mine.
Yeah.
Others have theirs.
Name
mine
one.
is that I noticed that we bring up our girls to be more focused, and our boys, we allow them maybe more space. And of course, boys do mature later than girls. So I think all these come to fore. The girls tend to be more focused in school.
Yeah.
At that age.
But later on, the boys catch up.
Oh yeah, and they do better sometimes, much better.
Yeah. Well, and also a lot of the women drop out of this education, especially in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay, what else has been happening?
Well, I think what else?
Remember the fees? The fees.
Schools
fees are a big
resuming
thing. Yes,
in
yes,
September.
Fees are a big thing.
And everybody's worried about fees. Because there's no way schools can keep fees constant, can they? So because the cost of everything has gone up.
Well, the cost of everything has gone up. Staff in particular, I mean, recruitment, retention, welfare, well-being. I mean, you can't square that circle with, you know, you go to the market. You can't even buy stationery. Diesel. I mean, the price of diesel to keep schools running. I know. You have to have that. And also, government has not helped. I'm sorry. They have not exactly kept, you know, we need to work together. We're on the same side of the fence. We're on the side of the children. And whatever will help to keep schools going and make sure they have great outcomes for the children is what we should all be looking at.
Well, I'm excited about that because I do think as an educationist, it's important to me to understand that all children matter.
Yeah.
And therefore, you can't say children in public schools are our only concern, and you can't say children in private schools are your only concern. Yeah. We should be concerned with all of them. And so this is now to start thinking about strategies that government can and should put in place to make the business, so to speak, of education at least more. I'm not talking about profits now, but with more value for the owners, for the children, for the parents, for the community. So
I mean, somebody said that for our country to actually get back to where we were, because all these people doing really great things abroad, they got their education from here, UI, IFE. It will take us 15 years if we start today. So I think this program is really needed. I hate to say it myself.
Yes, it is. It is. We do, and we need those 15 years we need to compress those 15 years into like 3 or 4.
I don't see how we can. Because from the time a child enters school, you add 15 years. Yeah, so it's everywhere along the road. But we looked at WAEC results, we looked at the fees. What about the fees in the tertiary? Because that was in the news lately.
Yes, it was.
But it was, first of all, sort of like scary, and then we heard it wasn't as bad as we thought. What was the news there?
It was rather scary because one thought it was, because these were federal universities and they normally charge about the lowest fees.
Yeah.
And it's really fair for the child from a different demographic to be able to go to school. You know, the fees just went up dramatically. But after a while, it was found that it really was the non-obligatory fees, accommodation and so on. But I think the president stepped in, and I understand that now that has been stepped aside for a while.
God willing.
Hope so.
Now, what we're hoping over the course of the programs is that people will write in, phone in, and tell us what they'd like us to talk about, or if they have a view or some important information that we don't have, that you'd be happy to share with us. That would be fantastic. And then enrollment is an issue, isn't it?
Enrollment, of course, enrollment has been dropping for a couple of years.
Yes.
For many reasons.
What sort of reasons do you think?
Well, we all talked about it sometimes with
Japa. And this is not just private schools.
No. It's happening in public schools as well, where young teachers are actually leaving us. Not the more mature ones, not the older teachers, but generally the young teachers that we've just recruited, who we are very excited about. They're tech savvy, they're modern in their thinking.
They're not staying in the profession.
They're not staying.
Yeah.
I think
so it's something that needs talking about and examining and digging a bit deeper. But today, our main issue is
on safeguarding.
What is safeguarding?
Well, we have to take care of all the children in the school. They have to feel physically safe, emotionally safe, socially safe, and safe. They have to feel safe in all ramifications, because that's when they can come to school and do well. You know, I just noticed that we just started talking. It looks like to me that we just started talking about this recently. But it's always been an issue that children have always had difficult times. They've always lived in difficult circumstances.
Well, I would expand the definition of safeguarding. Okay, it's protecting children and promote their welfare. But I would also add vulnerable adults as well. Because they're people who are not technically children, but they're still vulnerable. So it's to make them feel safe, and it could encompass not just active acts against them, but also neglect, emotional neglect, physical neglect, cruelty, bullying. But
sometimes it's even poverty, you know.
Poverty,
children living in very poor circumstances. They're often quite traumatized by it all.
We've got an amazing guest. We've got an amazing guest, and she's a legend in her own lifetime. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our guests.
Well, I'm very proud to introduce Titi Lola Vivour Adeniyi. She describes herself as a public administrator, an author, a consultant, a philanthropist, and a politician. I got that from her LinkedIn profile.
Yes,
and that was very interesting.
If you want to check somebody out, check out their LinkedIn profile.
Because there they're talking about themselves and how they want to be described. And she says but learning more about her, she's a legal professional and expertise in public policy formulation and implementation. And right now, she's a Director General, or Executive Secretary, I think, of the Gender-Based Violence Office of the Lagos State Government. I'm very proud to have Titi Lola with us. Thank you, Titi Lola.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to be here.
Good morning.
We are so happy to have you. We're hoping you'll be able to just walk us through safeguarding from your experience. Why is it? I mean, as Sade said, why is it we're hearing so much about it now? Has it always been like this, or is it a new phenomenon? What do you think?
Thank you so much for having me. So these issues, child abuse, child protection concerns, domestic violence, sexual violence, these issues have always been with us. But I think what what's interesting or what's different now is the fact that we have it more on the fore. We have people speaking up about these issues. Some people say we should commend social media because social media is helping people to report. Social media is helping us shed light on issues that have been shrouded in secrecy. And then, of course, we cannot overemphasize government intervention in this area. So before now, for us in Lagos State, and even in the country as a whole, since 2007, the federal government, the National Assembly, enacted the Child Rights Law. 2004, enacted the Child Rights Law, and other states were encouraged to do so. Lagos, we enacted as in 2007. We amended in 2015, and as we speak, it's still currently being amended. It's being reviewed for further amendment. But what we did in Lagos is to go a step further and look at how we can truly safeguard the rights of children. And that was what informed the executive order on safeguarding our child protection program in 2016. Right. At the moment, I believe it's just the FCT and a couple of states that have something similar. But the difference with us in Lagos is that it's not just the policy document. It's actually an executive order backed by, it's backed by an executive order.
Now,
and
sorry,
so that gives
I just wanted to ask you, does this apply only to children, or does it also encompass vulnerable adults? Because I know you do a lot of work on gender-based violence generally.
Definitely. So when we're talking about safeguarding and child protection, it's actually for children.
Right.
And, the law says any person below the age of 18, is a child. So safeguarding and child protection, executive order, the policy is about children. But of course, in terms of engaging adults, talking about domestic violence, sexual violence, we have safeguarding programs that are ultimately geared at preventing domestic violence from occurring in the first instance.
Fantastic. I must commend Lagos State too.
Well, it's, and I think Lola has been involved in it right from the start. So I think I'd like to know the procedure for reporting a case in Nigeria, in Lagos State in particular. Yeah.
And in a school, or where exactly, ma'am?
Let's start with the school, since we are into education. Yeah.
Okay, so for the schools, we actually, the part of the policy document actually lists steps of how reports can be made, right? Yeah. And then we now went a step further to add an annexure to the policy. So what the policy requires is to have, for each institution, each child-centered institution, to have a safeguarding and child protection designated officer. So this person ideally should be a guidance counselor or a school social worker. We know that most facilities, most education institutions don't have school social workers. So we try to leverage the guidance counselors and sometimes teachers as well. So we have regular engagements, and we train these designated safeguarding child protection officers because they are the ones that we believe are closer to the children. They are the ones that are in a vantage position to observe signs of trauma. They are the ones that we believe will observe change in behavior. So they are closer to these children. And they are the ones that we hope these children will be able to confide in and to make disclosures of abuse. So a case ideally should be reported to the designated child protection officer. And the child protection officer should escalate appropriately to either the head of school or the school administrator. But we know that there are certain instances where these cases are escalated to the head of school or the administrator. And then somehow they try to cover these cases up. And so that's why we have the procedure for mandated reporting. So people can actually report confidentially, anonymously, and they can just say, oh, this is happening in this particular school. We need you to come in and investigate. So we can actually get cases directly from the designated safeguarding child protection officer, the DSCO, or we can get cases anonymously.
Is that the concept of whistleblowing?
Yes.
Exactly. So in Lagos, we have the mandated reporting policy. It's a policy again, and it's actually backed by an executive order that was done under the Governor Fashola's tenure in 2014. So the executive order on safeguarding on
whistleblowing,
sex offenders register and mandated reporting policy, because we know that there are certain professionals that have interface with children that are mandated to report actual or suspected cases of child abuse. These people cannot turn a blind eye and say, it doesn't concern me. No, it concerns you by virtue of the fact that you work with children, you have interface with children, and it's not limited to children or to professionals in the school setting.
Well,
even doctors. You see a child, every now and then, there's a broken arm, there's a bruised eye, and you keep treating. Your index of suspicion must be up. What is going on with this child? Who is abusing this child? And then you have a duty. You are mandated to report that case to the authorities. And failure to report actually attracts both criminal and civil sanction.
Oh, fantastic. Because I know, I mean, I don't know whether that law mandating schools to report and what they need to do, are they mandated to have regular training? Because I know the Keeping Children Safe in Education law in England, which has just been updated, the new one, 2023, comes into effect 1st of September. There's mandated safeguarding training, and this includes safer recruitment. It includes even the internet access. It includes, like you said, mandated reporting. And if you report and nothing happens, there's actually clear lines on what you need to do. And then there's something called the prevent training that you have to do. Is there mandatory training for not just schools, like you said, maybe hospital settings, church, Sunday school settings? Because a lot of abuse does happen in religious institutions.
Definitely. So the policy, and that's why it's important for us to back whatever we're doing with legislation.
Yeah.
So the policy is somewhat persuasive, right? It tells you that it urges and encourages institutions to have trainings, and then our government also has a responsibility to provide these trainings to the best of our ability, right? And so we do that, but we know that it's important for these institutions to take ownership of safeguarding and child protection. They have a duty to ensure that whilst these children are in their facility, these children are safe. So what we're working on now, as I said earlier during the introduction, we're reviewing the child's rights law. We want to embed issues of safeguarding and child protection into the child's rights law, and then mandate child-centered institutions to have these things. So safer recruitment procedures, background checks, continuous trainings, the whole works, so that they don't have any excuse to say, oh, sorry, we did not know, as they say, ignorance of law is not an excuse. But just to share what we've been doing as a state, because we realize that it's important for us to assist in education institutions as they go about, safeguarding the rights of children. So 2 years ago, we leveraged technology and introduced an online course for it. The first one we did was an introduction to safeguarding and child protection. And it's basically 5 modules. We tried to tailor courses that are taken on Coursera and EDX. And so we had 3 facilitators take teachers, school counselors, social workers on different issues. Introduction to safeguarding and child protection, signs to look out for.
I'm begging you.
Yeah, you
Sorry?
need to add
Do you
them.
know, people, I said, please add churches, mosques, and religious institutions, because people's antenna is sort of lowered when they go into these places. They think
Yes,
they're safe spaces.
yes.
You know, we're more likely to blame teachers for things, but we don't look at religious leaders. So please add
So
them
we
to your
actually
list.
have a different, we have a different
They too should
program
have the
for
training.
religious institutions. Oh yes. But for religious institutions, what we do actually is to actually engage the children directly.
Right.
You know, children have a role to play in their safeguarding and their protection. Even if you equip the parents, you equip the teachers and everybody, children ultimately also have a role to play in
Yeah.
their own protection. And so when we go to churches, when we go to mosques, we engage them on issues of SGBV. We engage them on issues of child abuse. We let them know signs to look out for, the process of grooming. You know, pedophiles don't just pounce on children. There is a process. Children are groomed before they actually engage in sexual activity with the abuser. So we'll equip them with this information. Recently, we launched My Passport of Rights, and it basically just summarizes what these issues are and then tells them about the different forms of abuse and signs to look out for and how to report. So that's actually how we engage religious institutions.
Well,
But
thank
I
you
do
very much,
agree with you
Lola.
that it would be good
Thank you,
to
Lola.
onboard them on the training.
I'm just curious about how you work with other agencies of government, because I think in working with religious institutions, you can't work by yourself. You need, so I just wanted you to give us a full review of the agencies that you work with and each person's role.
Thank you so
Did you
much.
get
So
that?
safeguarding is a
Okay. All
collective
right.
responsibility. No agency can provide all the services. It's multidisciplinary in nature. So for us in Lagos, we have, of course, the Ministry of Education, the parent ministry. In the Ministry of Education, you have Office of Education Quality Assurance. You have, I think, private education when we're trying to engage private schools. There's also a need to engage this curriculum department because we're trying to infuse SRHR, sexual and reproductive rights and health, into the curriculum. So we're engaging with them as well. Then we have the Ministry of Youth and Social Development. Ministry of Youth and Social Development is in charge of all things that pertains to children. Child abuse, there are different departments. But for this purpose, we have two key departments: Child Protection Unit and School Social Work Department. Now, if a case occurs and there's a need to rescue that child and place that child in a temporary facility, that's within the mandate of the Child Protection Unit. So we work very, very closely with the Ministry of Youth and Social Development. Of course, the Ministry of Health, if we need to ensure that the survivor is able to access medical services post-trauma, the Ministry of Health plays an invaluable and indispensable role. Then access to justice, ensuring that perpetrators are held accountable, survivors are able to access support and justice. That's where the Ministry of Justice, particularly the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, come in. And also, government cannot do it on its own. We need to leverage our relationship with the private sector or the CSOs and the NGOs. So we actually have CSOs that are in this space of child protection. We have Child Protection Network, we have Mirabel Center, we have Warif, we have Checheyara. So Lagos actually has a task force on implementation of the safeguarding and child protection policy. And this task force comprises top-level representatives of these different agencies. And I must also add the police, because we're dealing about crimes, isn't it? And ultimately, we need to help the police investigate and, refer to them for them to do the needful and, ensure that perpetrators are held accountable. So safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. It's everybody's business, as we see. And all of us have to work together, in ensuring that we're able to provide all the support and services that survivors require if it does occur, and then we're able to ultimately prevent.
You know what? As a follow-up question, this is all quite exciting. But what are you doing to ensure that the public knows this? Because there's not enough knowledge and understanding in the public. What are you doing about this? This is critical, because I noticed among the agencies, you didn't mention those who would help you sort of speak to the public. So
would they even recognize something as abuse? I've seen things on social media where the parents are busy shouting, "Hey, you!" and the child is going, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," and they think it's funny, you know, because how do they themselves recognize what is abuse? I mean, there's some things that they say are cultural.
Definitely.
Yeah. At what point does that sort of?
Or they say this is how I was brought up.
Yes.
Exactly. And it worked for me. So yes, of course, I'm sorry, I left the members of the fourth rail, the media. The media plays a huge role in ensuring that we don't wink in the dark, and we're able to take these messages to places where our feet haven't been to. So of course, the media is very, very critical in, more importantly, pushing this zero tolerance message and pushing out measures that government, NGOs have put in place to safeguard and protect children. So when it comes to awareness, the truth is, we can't do too much of awareness. Sometimes people call us and say, you people don't go to schools, you don't go to churches, you don't go to mosques. But if I reel out the data of the number of schools we've been to, the number of communities we've gone to, we do door-to-door community engagement. We're in the mosques, we're in the churches, we're in the markets, we're in the bus parks. We are literally doing door-to-door. But it appears, because I think because of our large population, it's like we're dropping drops in the ocean. Yeah. And I think this is why we need to leverage technology and we need to leverage new media. And so aside from, going to these places, we're trying to push out our messaging.
Well, you've got our program.
On social media. We're trying to...
as you're doing, you're coming on our program and people will hear about what is available.
Yes! But, and so we leverage platforms such as this,
it's fantastic because I'm learning quite a lot about what is actually available out there. I hope you're going to come for our next program, because we're going to, this is going to be a two-part safeguarding program. We're going to talk about safer recruitment, the register of sex offenders in particular, and then also the things that we've been hearing lately in the news about what has been happening in some schools. So will you please come for our next program?
Definitely.
Excellent. You're such a star.
Once I get the invitation, I'll make myself.
Yes. Don't worry, you'll do it immediately. Yes. Next week, you'll be on to do it.
Thank you very much, Lola.
I think just to make the point that, when we talk about safeguarding, people think that we're coming from a punitive lens. Safeguarding is, we're not trying to punish or catch or apprehend abusers. When we're talking about safeguarding, it's remedial. We are trying to correct behaviors, So we need to engage. We need to have this conversation. Ultimately, create a lot of awareness so people know, that there's a better way of doing things.
Okay. When you come back to the next program, you're going to tell us how we can reach you, how people can reach you.
Oh yes.
And
we share your social media handles and so on, so that
because you're vital in this conversation. Well, thank you so much. Well, Sade, what do you think?
Well, you saw her passion.
Yes.
And we didn't let her talk for too long.
No.
But upon it all, you could read that a lot of things are happening.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know half of this stuff.
I know. That's why there's got to be a lot more effort on the communication. Media, social media, and so on.
Even maybe in films?
In films,
in the theaters, where people congregate.
Talking about films, that's an interesting one. We could have a drama. We could be dramatized. Because they are. Look at what she said. They are going to markets. They are going to buses.
I didn't even know.
Buses.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So I think it's a great effort.
So how would you rate our first episode?
Oh, I enjoyed myself thoroughly. At a point, I was just listening. I know we teachers talk too much.
Yes,
I just couldn't talk because she was saying so many interesting and important things. I think it's great. I think we did well.
Okay. Out of 10.
And what do you think?
Well, I think out of 10, we did like a 7+.
You are a teacher.
I'm a teacher.
You are a true teacher. That's why you're not giving yourself 10 over 10.
There's always room.
You know, my people's always now saying, but it's a good one, but. So I think we did well.
Okay, thank you so much for tuning in to our first episode of SADE and
SADE
on education.
On education.
Everything to do with education, because education is fundamental.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
Next week.
Oh, in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, in 2 weeks' time.
In 2 weeks'
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Sorry, I was...